Poddin My Noggin, hosted by CK Sims, creating a platform to elevate, educate, and heal by creating a space where people can share their stories of struggle, triumph, and redemption. CKS Media.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Poddin My Noggin. I'm your host, CK Sims, and this week we are joined by award-winning and acclaimed novelist, former CNN editor, White House correspondent, podcaster himself, and the accolades can go on and on and on and on, Mr. John Didakis. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
So the reason you're here today, I think we could probably do maybe 5 full episodes just talking about your life experience, things that you shared with me on the forum, and then things that I found out through your website and all of those things. Like being a White House correspondent, right, is a pretty big deal. And you personally interviewed 2 of the presidents. I'm afraid to. Was it Ronald Reagan and JFK?
No, I'm not that old. I remember seeing JFK in person, but I was a kid. I've interviewed Reagan and Carter.
That's who it was. Okay, yes, and that is like profound parts of history, really. If you look at it, if you step back and you look at that, those are profound parts of history. But why you're here today, sir, is because of this book, Enemies Domestic. Now, we're going to talk about it. So first and foremost, I didn't know it was a series until I opened it up.
Right.
So I will say, damn you, sir, because now I have to go spend, it looks like several hundred on Amazon to get the other 5 books. And so I got the book. I get a lot of books. This is one of my favorite things to do is read. And my favorite genre is suspense thriller, the thriller genre, political thriller. I've read so many. It's my favorite. I devour them. And then this book came. And initially, I'm just going to be honest with you, I looked at it and I thought, okay, well, all right, we'll give it a read, no big deal. And I sat down and I annoyed my dog because I dived into the book and didn't come up. A couple things before we even get started is it gave me immense anxiety. And I am someone who goes to bed strictly every night at 10 p.m. There's no moving away from that. And last night I went to bed and I was sitting in bed and I said to myself, I really want to know what happened. And I had to talk myself down from getting up and just going and finishing the book. But I woke up this morning, had my coffees, took my dog for a walk, came home, and then finished the book this morning. At which point I send you a message to see if we can get you on while it's still very much alive in my head. So, So many questions. Everyone, the book is out. It's available on all major online bookstores. You can order it. You can get it off of Amazon, shipped directly to you. If you've never read a Lark Chadwick mystery, such as myself, the book is not written as if you're going to need to read them to understand what's happening in the book, but you'll probably end up wanting to read them because of the character that you've built. So let's unpack this for a while. My first question, and I don't normally do this, I'll be honest with you. I typically don't think of questions before sitting with someone because I like to have more of an organic conversation. But I do have a question about this particular, and I apologize, my desk is a bit wobbly. This particular character. So Lark Chadwick is such a brilliant character. But
Thank you.
and it's the number sixth book. You're currently working on the number seventh, I believe, but this is the number sixth book of that series. What what was your defining moment 20 years ago that made you want to write a book through the female perspective?
Well, okay, I can answer that. And CK, thank you so much. I mean, we've never met before, and so your, real-time feedback is huge. I mean, this is a gift that any author would want to hear. And it's so much of it's always a relief to know that a stranger who doesn't know me, we're not emotionally invested in each other, can pick up the book cold and become immediately captivated and immersed in it. I mean, that's any writer's goal, and we don't always pull it off. And writing and reading are very subjective, so
Yes.
not everyone is going to be pleased. But your reaction is exactly what any writer would shoot for, and so it means very much to me that you would not only have that experience, but that you'd share it with me and your followers. So thank you. Um,
Oh, thank you
actually,
for
the
writing it.
the answer to your question, the going back 20 years, actually, we have to go back 30 years because that's when I started writing fiction. Up until that point, I'd been a journalist for, since my career started in the late 1960s. And it wasn't until they made me an editor at CNN that I needed a creative outlet because editing was tedious. It was fault finding. And so that's when I started actually playing with fiction. And I started writing a female character, not for any calculated reason other than someone suggested that when I start writing, I should write in a way that stretches who I am. And since I'd never been a woman, at least not in this life, I gave it a try. And I made it, I think, a particularly insightful observation and discovery, and that is that emotions are not gender specific. We all have the exact same emotions. It's just that in my experience, the women in my life are more willing to share their emotions and they're more articulate about the emotions they share. So it made it more interesting for me to write as a woman. Plus, at the time, I was working at CNN, so that's with many women who were in their early to mid 20s. And because I'm a curious person, I would ask them, "What's it like to be a woman?" And they would tell me about their job and their careers and their parents and their romances. And I just learned by listening. One quick little nugget I learned is that there was an anchor I worked with who was beautiful, and I remember asking her, "What's it like for guys to come on to you all the time?" And she said, "I can tell in the first 20 seconds if I'm safe. I never have to worry about being safe in a conversation." And that's when I realized that part of being a woman is playing defense. And it was little things like that that I picked up over time. And so a lot of these women became beta readers for me, helping me to make sure that I got it right.
Well, I want to tell you some of my thoughts about Lark and how you have written her.
Thank you. All right.
So I'm sure it also comes into to play that you've now, been working with this particular character for six books, right? One of the things that stood out to me as a reader, and I'll repeat for everybody because I think I've told this on the podcast before, but I'll tell you, I am most mindful, most in my body when I'm reading, and I experience what's happening in the book in my body.
Thank
So
goodness.
and I think that that's why I love to read so much is because it takes me away, but it doesn't. It brings me actually into myself, and I'm aware of, maybe a tingling on my toe or a little itch behind my knee. Like I'm just very present in that moment.
Do you
So when I was
speed read?
reading,
Do you speed read, or are you just sort of very slow savoring the experience?
See, I'm a speed reader because I could read your book. Essentially, I read your book in 6 hours.
Okay.
Um, right? And
Yeah.
I usually read a regular book around 400 pages in 4.5 to 5 hours. But like I am, it's nothing else exists in that time. Like if I
Wow.
have to use the bathroom, I'll take the book with me to the bathroom. If I step outside for a cigarette because I am a smoker, I'll take it with me. If I eat dinner, I'm reading it. Like I am just in the book. And I
Nice.
want to know what happens and I want to sort of feel what the characters are feeling. But back to my observation of your writing of Lark specifically. It was so evident and obvious the level of care you took with crafting this character.
Thank
Like
you.
it was in the pages. It felt, and like I think you may be a feminist actually. Like if we're talking, I don't know if you
Oh
accept that
yeah.
label, but
Yeah.
like it felt as though, and that was where the question came from. Like, what made you want to write from the female perspective? Because you did it in such a way that felt authentic, um, and balanced. Like so many of the wonderful women that I have known in my life, like I can see Lark in so many of them, or so many of them in Lark in different ways, right? Of course,
Well,
some of the things that happened to Lark has not happened to them, but like just in how she's processing information, or it was just such beauty in how you created her in this book.
thank you.
You're welcome. Like, thank you. I hope that I'm not the only one that can notice that you've done such great justice with this character. So here's where I get myself into trouble, and I've already sent a text to my editor and say if I let anything slip that would be like a spoiler,
Spoiler.
you need to get in there and be like, edit that out because I have done that because I get so excited and animated about the story. So I think I read your prologue when you were talking about sort of the story started in 2019, if I'm not wrong, and then but it really came to be it was 2021.
20, it was right after the U.S. Supreme Court overruled Roe v. Wade, the abortion decision. So that would have been
Yes,
2022.
yeah, 2022. And was that the catalyst that finally said, I'm going to put this out there. It has to happen. What
Yeah.
made you want? So, I mean, I think I can discuss this. So, why it gave me so much anxiety for anybody at home listening and who are curious, and I won't say too much, is that you have interwoven this story, this fictional story, into real time current events that are still very, like, this was released last year, right?
It was, yeah, it was released July 4th, 2024.
Yeah, so still very relevant in this exact moment. And I think that there was a lot of just correlations and synapses firing.
Let me give people some context because I don't think
Okay.
I'll be giving anything away. I think what you're referring to is the fact that the book begins when Lark, she's been White House correspondent for the Associated Press in two of the previous books, and when this story picks up, she is pregnant. The dad is dead. She's ambivalent about becoming a single mom, and she has just been named White House press secretary. And the first question that she's asked in the daily briefing comes from a Tucker Carlson type who asks, "Are you or are you not planning to abort your unborn child?" Lark is an introvert. She's a private person. And this puts her right in the spotlight, trying to deal with this abort or not to abort decision in a highly toxic and polarized political fishbowl, very similar to what we've been living in for the past 10 years. And so the story then deals with how she works this out as she is now in the crosshairs of both sides in the abortion debate. And I'll say one more thing and give you a chance to follow up, because I appreciate the fact that you used the word balanced, because abortion is a very controversial and emotional issue. And as a journalist, I've covered all sides of the story. And as an individual, I've been on all sides of the opinions of the story. I mean, my wife and I and my daughter have had, arguments about abortion, as I think many people have in our society. And so when I wrote this book, I wanted people, no matter where they came down on the abortion issue, to feel that their position was fairly represented through the characters that I've created. And I think I've succeeded. But that was the goal, to try to explain what it would be like for life for a pregnant woman in at a time when abortion is a crime, to be facing this abort or a not to abort decision. And coincidentally, the book was published the same week the Supreme Court ruled that presidents have absolute immunity from criminal prosecution for crimes they commit as part of their official duties. This was before Donald Trump was elected for a second time. And I was hoping that it would be a cautionary tale, to get the U.S. to wake up and realize that their vote was going to be very important. Well, they didn't go the way I would have liked them to go, but that's okay. It's a free country for a while. But a dictator in enemies domestic does become president.
Okay, so thank you. So that means I can talk more about it. But
Yeah.
okay, so
But we don't want to give away how and all that kind
no,
of
no,
stuff.
no, 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 absolutely not. But here's the thing. So when it comes to the abortion um, piece, I love that that was your goal with this book because you achieved so many things in this book. But like what you did with the abortion, I thought was another layer of the care for the character, right? Because you allowed that character to play out all of the scenarios.
Yeah, because
And
Lark is pro-choice, but when you're
yeah,
faced with that decision, it's one thing in theory. It's another when you have to make the decision for yourself.
now, am I allowed to say Roland's? Oh, I just said his name. Roland's name. He's the man that asked the question.
Right.
Let me tell you something, without giving anything away. If you're out, and it's so crazy to me that you did write this book before the last election. Roland, I'm trying to choose my words carefully because I don't like to be mean. But
Well, while
Roland,
you're choosing your words, let me just explain. Roland works for a sort of uh, not a traditional media outlet. And that is what we're seeing now in the media landscape. It's not just ABC, CBS, NBC, the New York Times, and so on. The media landscape is now much more fractured and nichified. And so he
mm,
has a lot of followers, but not so much editorial oversight. So he gets to pretty much go where he wants with it. And journalistic ethics, he's
non-existent.
it's the Wild West out there.
Yeah, and you wrote that character very well as well.
Thank you.
Because I don't hate anyone. This is how I view the world. I don't like what Donald Trump has done with the United States and the players that are at play, but I don't hate them. I don't
Right.
want harm to come to them. I do want justice, but I do not want harm to come to anyone. Roland was the type of person, while I was reading the book, sometimes I have that knee jerk sort of spit up moment where I'm like, I'm like, get hit by a bus already, like
Yeah,
something like
right.
that. You know what I mean? Like you have
Sure.
I'm human, so I have those feelings when this happens. Roland created that feeling numerous times
Yeah.
throughout the book. And what I found really interesting too was that Roland can be representative of a lot of key players that are currently in media right now.
That's right.
And this is a part, like I'm telling everybody at home, I'm being mindful of time, but I'm telling everybody at home, like if you read this book, like you are going to be like, John Didakis has ESP, or he's a seer, or he can tell the future, whatever the situation may be, because the correlations are incredible. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Partner today with CK Sims and Poddin My Noggin to get in front of an audience that cares. You will be supporting mental health stories, tales of resilience, and uplifting content, aligning your brand with bringing goodness, authenticity, and kindness front and center. This spot could be yours. Do you have a story of struggle and resilience? One that you want to share with others and possibly help someone through their own struggles? Find the link in the show description and fill out the guest form today.
Welcome back, everybody. Before the break, we have been talking to John Didakis, author of perhaps my favorite book of 2025. You know, I don't know if I can say favorite because there's another one that's really good, but like one of my top twos for sure. But it's really good. Yes, so Enemies Domestic. And so as you can maybe surmise by the title, it alludes to perhaps some domestic type enemies within our current framework, if you will.
Well, exactly. It's taken from the oath of office that all government employees have to take, that they pledge to protect the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And we all know about uh, international threats, but more and more, and this is not just true of the United States. I think it's happening increasingly around the world. That the real threat to governance comes from within. And
Mhm.
that's probably always been the case, but I think it's especially the case right now that, at least in the U.S. Constitution and our institutions are literally under attack.
Without
Donald
question.
Trump has undermined trust in the news media, the judiciary, the intelligence community, the scientific community, and that's what dictators do. They undermine trust in everything but themselves. And so, people are meant to feel that. And in fact, he said this when he first ran for president back in 2016. Only I can fix it, is what he said.
Inflated. Inflated. So when you were preparing to write this book in 2019, before you really got on it, you knew your goal was to tell the story of abortion. Did you already know how things were going to play out and what
No.
groups you were going to include?
No. This was usually when I write a book, for the first 5 books, I usually plan them out. I mean, I'm not meticulous in the way I plan, but I have a pretty good idea of where I'm going. But usually, about halfway through, I realize that I haven't thought things through clearly enough, so I have to kind of just get my characters talking and let things pull together. Like in my book, Fake, which is the one that precedes this. I started that one when Trump was elected because I was troubled by his comment that journalists are enemies of the American people, and I know for a fact that's not true. And so what I did is I put Lark in a situation where we, the reader, know that something that is being spread around about her that's national news is false, but we know it as the reader, but the rest of the country doesn't. And I wanted
Mhm.
to tell a story that shows that lies have consequences. And so there was a time when I was writing that book where I got stuck. And so I wrote Russia does something provocative here. And that that got me, that broke the log jam, and I was able to write more. For Enemies Domestic, this was pretty much a collaboration with my wife Cindy. She and I have coffee every morning, and when the abortion decision came down, she said, "You really need to write about this." And I changed the direction that I was going to go. And so we talked about it. We had an idea of what the story should be. And so the process was, we had this idea. I would come down here to work, and there's that terror of the blank screen. If I can get my characters talking to each other, then the act of moving your fingers is like having flashlights on your knuckles that throw just enough light down the path so that you can write the scene. Finish the scene. There's this tremendous sense of elation. I'd go up to Cindy. She was my alpha reader. She'd read the chapter, and then the process would repeat with despair again. And so the process actually, where we didn't know how it was going to end. And she got me out of a lot of jams. There were times when she said, "Oh, you jumped the shark here." But there were other beta readers that I had who said, "Oh, this is good. The question is, how are you going to get out of it?" And that's where Cindy came in handy again. So this process, I think, worked because it was a collaborative effort. And so we're using that for book 7 right now.
Well, so at what point did the primary antagonistic group get written into the story? Was that always there? Because that is so artfully done and educational, and
I
but
think,
and I'm
yeah.
also not accusatory either. I just want to point that out to you, that you did such a great job with identifying that group of individuals, and their motives without sort of overly demonizing them, if you will.
Yeah, thank you. I think it was very much just being aware of what's going on, being aware of what people are saying to each other in social media,
Yeah.
and also having been in these conversations, especially during Trump one, and so it's very much genuine and real. But I think that one of I do a lot of writing coaching and teaching and manuscript editing, and one of the things I teach my students is that when you create your characters, you don't want to create a protagonist who's perfect, because you want to draw from personal experience. And even Superman has kryptonite, that's his Achilles heel. And so you want to create characters that are authentic. Similarly, the villains, you don't want to create them you don't want to make them perfectly evil, because think of the villains in your own life. Chances are they put themselves, they put their best foot forward. You may even have married them. So you want to give your villain redeeming qualities. And I think that's very much the case in our current political discourse. It's very easy to demonize the other side as the other. And sure, one side may do it more than the other, but I think both sides do it to a certain extent. And what I'm finding, and I'll say this and then I'll shut up and give you a chance to follow up. What I'm discovering is that I'm going back to my journalism roots. What was happening during Trump one is that I'd already retired from CNN, so in a sense, I'd earned the right to be heard. So I was giving my opinion, which was new and scary for me, because for 45 years as a journalist, I was a registered independent. My kids didn't know how I voted. CNN did not allow you to put up bumper stickers or yard signs. You were not allowed to contribute to political campaigns. So my comfort zone was neutrality. You can
Mhm.
have opinions, but the professional journalist puts the opinions aside and gives everybody a fair shake, a fair opportunity to get their opinions out there. Well, I was so horrified by Trump's dishonesty. I mean, the guy lies every time he opens his mouth. It's a lie or an exaggeration. And I mean, if you think he tells the truth, you're fooling yourself. And so I was just trying to do my best to call him out and to raise the alarm about him. And so my Facebook conversations were basically lobbing rhetorical artillery shells into the enemy camp, foolishly believing that they would explode and change everybody's mind. It doesn't work that way. And I am now at a point where I am comfortable going back to not being able to win an argument. That's not going to happen because we can't even agree on what the facts are. And so now what I do in conversations, and I thankfully still have friends who I disagree with, who are, in my opinion, wrong, but they're on the other side of the issue, but they're intelligent, they're smart people. And so my conversations are, help me understand. Help me understand why you feel the way you do. And so we may not be able to find common political ground, but we are able to find common human ground. And I think there's plenty of that.
Well, it's so interesting. You used fooling around. I would have used a different F word, but one of the things that I really try to focus on is when I'm thinking about it, because I do get very flustered. Um, Something occurred to me, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 months ago, that we feel such righteous indignation that what is happening in the US right now is wrong, and that they are destroying the very fabric of America. That I'm not American, but I love America, right? I'm in Montreal. So um, all of these things that we have these strong feelings, we have these strong opinions. LGBTQIA, I think I got all the letters, are they should have their rights. Like, why is this even a conversation? Trans people, who are they hurting? Really? They should be able to
Exactly.
have their conversation. I am not favorable for abortion, but you know what trumps that? And I hate using that word. You know what? But like, fine, we'll just use the word. But the fact that it's none of my damn business. A woman's right to have full agency of her body, that's her right. It doesn't matter that I might be uncomfortable with abortion or whatever. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter because that's a woman's right. So those are the things. So we have all of these feelings and we feel like the world's gone shit or the pot, sorry,
Mm-hmm.
and it's falling apart and all this stuff. But what I realized and the thing that shifted me was in that same breath, the other side feel the exactly same way.
Exactly. Exactly.
So we're
And that's,
never
I think,
going
and that's important to remember. I mean, in many cases, the people who are, the MAGA Republicans, are in many ways doing what they think is going to be right for America because they feel the country has gone way too far the other way. And, you can make a case for, in some ways, maybe, we have. There's no one party has a corner on the truth and righteousness, and that's it's so yeah. I mean, I think that it's important to remember, if possible, that in many cases people are well-meaning on both sides. Not
to.
everyone, but
Not
many people
everyone.
are.
There are evil at play. There are evils at play. But
Sure.
I do believe that it's the echo chambers. You have people who their whole identities are not to critically think really for themselves because of their
It's almost
nuclear
willful.
family.
It's almost willful ignorance at this point
Oh,
for
it's
some people.
100%. But I think it's because it's embedded so deeply from the nuclear family and the surroundings that the thought of, and we're told, because my father is a pastor, a minister, Pentecostal. We're told growing up that to get doubt or to question the teachings is to be of sin, to be secular.
Yeah,
And
I
so
don't buy
they have
that.
these fears. I don't either anymore. Like I love there's a term for it. I can't recall what the term is when they get out of that evangelism. It's deconstruction. So
Something
I'm
like that.
deconstructed Pentecostal, if you will.
Yeah.
And what's interesting, though, is I will say this to you: my audience knows that they've been watching along, is that I'm a gay Christian. I
Right.
love me some Jesus. Like,
You'd be well,
I
you would
really,
be well, you would be welcome in the Episcopal Church.
well, and I love, I pray regularly. I live to be like Jesus. I
Right.
don't know if Jesus was as mouthy as I am, but like we're not we're of human, right? But yeah, so the thing is for me is that they have these thoughts. And one thing, because we're totally off track, because I want to get back to the book, but one thing I've never had the chance of saying this, but it's been ruminating in my head in for so long. The insult that they throw at us all the time is that we are woke.
Oh my God.
And then and
I
then
hate that.
but you know what's so funny? It's been ruminating for so long. If they call us woke, then they are admitting out loud that they are asleep.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean that term never landed for me because it's like, well, thank you because I think it's important to be awake and alert and awakened to different things. I mean, that's what makes life interesting because
Absolutely.
otherwise you're sleepwalking through life.
Which I think a large portion of the mega followers are, in fact, doing. I wish
Yeah.
they could wake up. I don't know if they'll ever be as liberal as I am, or maybe even you, but to just sort of see that harming others is not the way, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
okay, we had that sidetrack conversation. I could, and you know, it's so interesting to have it with you, right? Somebody who's been in it for so long, to
Right.
see the sides in Wolf Blitzer. Come on, 7 years, I think you said. Like,
Yeah, I worked with Wolf for 7 years as one of his editors.
yes, and he gave you a shout out, like a endorsement on your book, Fake, which, by the way,
Actually,
kills
on
me.
Fast Track, he read and blurbed my first one, Fast Track.
Fast Track, that's right.
Yeah.
Fake is the book that I would want to read because
Precedes.
it's the one right before. It's
Yeah.
for some reason on Amazon.ca. It's $88 for the paperback.
No,
I'm like, okay,
that's
but I'm
not
like, I
right.
really want
That's
it.
not right. That's not right.
As long as you're getting your cut, man, I don't mind spending the money.
That
But
sounds like it's a
so,
used book or something.
well, I don't know. I'll have to check it out because I do think I want my like to add to my library all of your books now,
Okay.
because I really enjoy them. Would you say, okay, let me ask you this question. So, to everybody at home, I want you to go get this book
Thank you.
because you just need to read this book for so
Okay.
many reasons. It's not just because it's a good book. The subject matter, you're going to learn stuff in this book. You know, one of the things that I will point out to you is that I thought the biggest sort of shift and catalyst happened in 2008. That was my theory in my head, okay, without giving anything away.
Mhm.
You've identified that it began in the 1960s.
Right.
And I'm like,
I got that. I don't know if you ever read Heather Cox Richardson. She's a historian in the US and she has, since Trump was elected the first time, she has been writing a daily essay on Substack, Facebook, places like that, where she's a historian and her specialty is Reconstruction right after the US Civil War. And so what she does is she looks at the current events and ties them back to history. And so she's able to go back to the 1960s and show how the seeds were planted and how we got to where we are slowly but surely. They actually go even farther back than that because a lot of the rhetoric that we're seeing now really goes back right after the Civil War when the African Americans were freed slaves. They were given the right to vote, and then it was taken away. The KKK, that's when the KKK came in and terrorized people and made them feel unsafe to vote. And that's when the Department of Justice was created. And so instead of it being overtly racist, that's when they talked about it being socialism. And so the rhetoric is an echo from the 1880s, and
hmm,
so it's I don't know if it's comforting, but it's by reading her, you can see that these kinds of things come in waves, and U.S. history, it's a pendulum kind of thing, and so we've been here before, and it's looked different, but in many ways the issues are very much the same.
And what was this person's name again?
Her name is Heather Cox, Cox Richardson.
Okay, so you all heard. I'm going to check her out now because I love that kind of stuff. But that's what I loved about this book as well. Like that was just one of the many other layers that it just I don't know. It's I feel like it's a little treasure that
Thank you.
I got gifted. And you know what's interesting? I will also tell you that I am a person who rereads books, similarly to um, rewatching movies. They say
Right.
that there's some psychological thing about that, safe places, whatnot, all of those things. I will reread this book because I think that when I read it again the second time, I'm going to get even more of the nuance about it. And then
Right.
one thing I want to point out is with your primary antagonist in this, I don't think I hated him. I didn't have a hate towards him.
I'm glad
I
to hear
had,
that.
yeah, I had the crafting was good. Um, there was there was some fanaticism in there, right?
Oh
Clearly,
yeah, you think?
but um, but it was almost it brings me back to current times, right? Where I don't hate anybody. I just
Right.
want justice to be served and I want, things to be corrected. But to hear you say the pendulum gives me hope. And I think that that's what, the world, not just America, but the whole world right now actually needs
And
is a
things have
little
been
more.
worse. You know what? Things have been worse than they are now. I mean, there is the Civil War. There's World
Mm,
War II when, when freedom and, democracy hung in the balance. The Nazis exterminated 6 million people. We're not at that point yet. I mean, there have been things similar to that over time.
mm,
We're not the Vietnam War. I mean, that was tremendously divisive. College campuses were exploding. There were riots all over the place. It's not nearly as fraught as it was back then. We might be going in that direction, but I think that there's enough institutional memory that exists that will keep us from going there, knowing how futile it can be to be at odds violently with other people. There's a better way, and I think a lot of people know that. And so I'm an optimist for no apparent reason.
Well, no, I love this because I feel like you're speaking from knowledge and fact, right? Because I think a lot of people just speak from emotion. That's a theme in
Right.
this book as well, which I
Sure.
really loved. We speak a lot from emotion. And, for me, I think it's so important for us to you're right. Like, it's very hard to watch the news now and to deduce whether it is fully credible or not. And
Exactly.
that is a cancer that was put in place in 2015, 2016, that sort of thing. I want us to get back to journalistic integrity where we can start to really lean in and trust. Yes, we're going to have some partisan views here and there, but I think that what I'd like to see is legislation passed, not just in the US, but in Canada and around the world, where if someone is speculating on the screen on the little chevron, it indicates that this is speculation.
Yeah.
Whereas if somebody is giving facts, like observed facts, all of those things, that's on the chevron as well. So the
Yep.
person can be who they are and say what they want, but the editor, maybe you have a job left to do, Mr. Dacus, is to make sure that the facts are highlighted and opinion is highlighted. So that could
You're,
be a
you've
place.
really you've really put your finger on something, and I want to give you a short little anecdote that I
Okay.
observed. When 9/11 happened, when the Twin Towers in the U.S. were attacked by two hijacked airliners in 2001, I was at CNN at the time, and there just happened to be a camera crew that was shooting promotional video for us in the newsroom. And so, there's this huge story that is breaking, and there just happened to be a camera crew behind the scenes watching how CNN operated in one of the biggest stories of the century. And there was a moment where Bob Fernand, who was the senior executive producer. He was in charge of CNN's coverage of 9/11. Someone and the camera's on him, and it's cinema verite. I don't know if he was even knew he was on camera, but someone came up to him and said, "There's a rumor that blah blah blah." I can't remember what the rumor was, and Fernand said to him, "We do not report rumors." And that was critically important at a time when, things are very chaotic. And here's one takeaway, and that is um, we want information that we can trust. And my suggestion is the next big thing that happens, whatever it is, I think the way you'll be able to tell if you are watching a credible news organization or not is if they start speculating, as if they start, adding dots, conspiratorial things, oh, well, this and then that. And, if they're jumping to conclusions, that's a dead, that is a red flag that this is not a trustworthy news organization because they're speculating. We do not need speculation in a breaking news situation. We need the facts. And if we don't know the facts, we say we don't know. These are questions that we have, and we'll go to the people we think who will be able to answer them. But if you're just starting to, speculate and start to create, a conspiracy theory, don't go there. Just don't.
I want the journalistic language back as well.
Yeah,
Because
attribution.
there's such a huge shift in the language. Because once upon a time, things were very much allegedly. Speculation is stating this, right? Like they led with what was, maybe slight rumor on what could have happened or whatnot. But the language was there, and it was clear when they were presenting it what they were presenting.
Exactly. And it's called attribution. And anything anything in a reputable news organization where you are asserting something that's factual, this is part of journalistic ethics, you must state your source. Because that
Hmm.
way the reader or the viewer has an opportunity to determine whether that source in their mind is accurate or reliable. So and so says thus and so. That doesn't make it so. It's just that's where it's coming from. Similarly, you have anonymous sources, and that is something that is part of journalistic ethics as well. When I was covering the White House when Reagan was president. There was a time when Reagan was going to be going overseas somewhere, and we were given a briefing in the White House briefing room, and the ground rules were that this is a senior government official. We were not allowed to name who the person was. It was an anonymous source. Well, I can tell you now, it was the Secretary of State. It was a reliable source, but the ground rules were we could not name that person. Why? Because they didn't want to steal the thunder from the president. They wanted to leave an opening for, maybe things will change, but it was a reliable source. And, those who didn't want to play by the rules left the briefing room because they didn't want to be bound by those rules. They felt that it should be on the record, and the White House should fess up as to who the source was. But here's the thing. If you're using an anonymous source, and this is at least I left CNN 12 years ago, so the standard may be different now, but um, if you're going to say an anonymous source, what's better for the viewer is somehow qualifying that anonymous source, an anonymous source close to the investigation, an anonymous source who was at the meeting but is speaking without permission. Somehow giving the reader at least some sense that this is a credible person. And, because people need to be able to trust their information. And so the general rule of thumb is if an anonymous source tells you something, you've got to get it confirmed by two other sources. For example, and I'll shut up again. Woodward and Bernstein's Deep Throat was an anonymous source, but they weren't allowed to quote him at all. They had to confirm their information elsewhere. All he was doing was pointing them where to go. And the reader had to understand that this was trustworthy information. The only people who knew who Deep Throat was Woodward and Bernstein and Ben Bradley, who was their editor. And the source was the assistant director of the FBI. This guy knew what was going on. Now, he had an ulterior motive. He was passed over for being director of the FBI, but that didn't make his information any less credible. So he was just telling Woodward and Bernstein where to go to get the information because he knew.
And Deep Throat is mentioned in here as well. So we're going to recap real quick. I'm cognizant of time. I feel like I said at the start of this show is that we could spend 5 episodes having talks about just life and your experience and all of that knowledge. I have a slight question before I continue because like there's things are popping up.
Sure.
I kind of have like this feeling in my tummy, if you will, that Lionel maybe
Stone
slightly,
just
is
for the
that you?
record, Lionel Stone is a recurring character in all 6 books. We start when we meet Lionel in Fast Track. He is a retired New York Times editor, national editor, Pulitzer Prize winner, who is retired to Wisconsin, his home state, where he runs a weekly newspaper. And Lark comes across him in investigating the deaths of her parents, and he becomes her mentor and friend, and that relationship has continued all the way.
And his inspiration was it maybe you?
He's not really. I mean, I worked with, when I was at another news organization, one of my mentors was a former New York Times assistant national editor, Bob Slosser. And so Lionel is much more crusty than Bob was. Bob was a kind, gentle soul. Although he told me that he used to cuss like a sailor when he was at the New York Times, but Lionel is more like a Lou Grant type. I know that's probably dating me, but Lionel is kind of a crusty old guy.
Well, I enjoyed his character in this particular book, but
Okay,
I'm going to read all of them. So,
thank you.
people at home, your mission, should you choose to accept it, if you want to read a book that one is going to entertain you, because I think everybody reads books to get something out of it.
Right.
So, entertain you, check. 2, educate you, check. 3, elicit emotional response on multiple current day happenings, check. Okay. Keep you on the edge of your seat, check. Take you for a roller coaster ride, because let me tell you something, just as an FYI to everybody listening. When you start reading the book, you think it's going one way, but holy schmoly, it does not go that way. And you're like so caught off guard that you're just like, what just happened? And it's what I would imagine Lark felt in that moment. So go get Enemies Domestic by John Didakis, available anywhere, Amazon if you want it overnight. It's in Canada as well. For my Canadian listeners, you will not be disappointed with the purchase of this book and reading it. And I also want to challenge anybody who's reading it to comment on the podcast or the YouTube. Tell me what your favorite part was, because without giving spoilers, because we don't want to do that, but like, tell me what your favorite part was. You can even find me on social media and send me a DM, because I have so many favorite parts of this book.
Well, and I would like to hear from these people too. And even if they don't like the book and if they have a bone to pick with me, that's fine too. And they can get a hold of me through my website, which is my name.com,
Yes.
johndedakis.com, John, D as in dog E, D as in dog A, KIS as in Sam.com.
And we're going to link that in the description as well.
Cool.
The johndedakis.com is a treasure trove of all things John Dedakis, right?
Thank you.
So, Mr. Dedakis, thank you so much for sending me your book and allowing me to just really thoroughly enjoy that journey, because I'm being a guest on the show and pivoting so last minute to show up so that I could still be excited and have it fresh in my mind, and realized, just before the show that I'm like, you can't ask every question because you'll give so much away. But
Well, I mean, wow. I mean, CK, you are a treasure yourself. I mean, any
thank
author
you.
would love to have you in their corner, and so I'm humbled. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Once again, thank you for being here. I will be reading the 5 preceding books. I will be looking for the 7th to see how that actually goes. I have many questions. Do we have an estimated date for that just release?
No, I'm only about 6 chapters in. I'm not real happy with it. It usually takes me a couple of years to do this, so you've got plenty of time to get caught up.
So you're my God, his name's gone because he hasn't written anything in forever. Uh, Author of like Angels and Demons. Why is his name gone?
Oh, is this Dan Brown?
Yes, love him. By the way, but I feel like he hasn't written anything in like, I don't know, 20 years. And but so yeah, so like you pace yourself. You don't
Well, and
put your
I have written a memoir, but it's at a publisher now being considered. So that's in the pipeline. That might actually come out sooner than book 7.
well. Hey, you'll have to come back and we'll have to talk about it.
I'd love to.
Because I
I'd
think
love
it's
to.
going to be a really interesting memoir. So once again, thank you for everybody at home. Until next time, get the book Enemies Domestic and get out there and live your wildest dreams.
For media and sponsorship inquiries, email info@cksims.com or visit cksims.com and fill out the contact form. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. A new episode airs every Saturday. CKS Media.